Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about word choice as well as active passive voice. So our words matter, not just when we speak, but also when we write. So there's some important questions I want you to get into the practice of asking yourself as you write about your word choices. So the first one is this appropriate or inappropriate? And I'm not just talking about, colorful or obscene language. Different assignments are going to call for different levels of writing. We've talked about high, middle, and low style writing. So you really just want to make sure that you are where you need to be and that you are choosing the appropriate words for your assignment. I want you to ask yourself, is this language precise? A lot of times when we create an argument or a thesis or something like that, we say, certain words that aren't very precise. So we say, a healthy diet includes vegetables. Well, how do we define that word healthy? And what exactly does that mean? Something more precise would be something like, people who eat more vegetables tend to have fewer vitamin deficiencies, or maybe we're talking about skin health. Maybe we're talking about bone health. Maybe we're talking about heart health, right? So there's a lot of things that a word like healthy or good or bad can encompass. So you want to make sure that you're using very precise language. Ask yourself, is this what I am trying to communicate? Does this say what I want it to say? And a lot of times when we look at words, sentences, and paragraphs, they don't really line up with the message that we have intended. So by asking yourself this question, you can get into the practice of making sure that, your writing says exactly what you want it to say. Ask yourself, do these words reflect the assignment or task? Is this something that I need to use formal language or informal language with? Obviously, if you are, sending a cover letter to a potential employee, there's a certain style and tone that you want to master. This is going to be very different than if you are, writing a post for your social media. So by, reflecting on, hey, is this appropriate for this specific task, will help you choose, your right correct words. Do these words represent my personality as a writer? One of the things that good writers do is they have a distinctive style and tone. Do these words fit into your distinctive style and tone as a writer? Are these words appropriate to the culture or subculture or language that you are writing for? This is an important question to ask too. If you're writing a research essay for your English teacher on a scientific topic, you might have to choose different words or jargon or define your words more often than you would if you were writing the same scientific research paper for a science professor. And then, are you using appropriate jargon? Jargon is words that are specific for an industry or group or culture. So if you're writing about video games, you'll probably include video game jargon that's specific for that particular group. So it's more than just coming up with a correct definition, though. Think about how you can use high impact words. Words like strong, potent, and impregnable all mean similar things. Does one of those words work better for your particular sentence? So you want to use words that retain their true meaning, but also make an impact on your reader. And also, it's a good idea to avoid overly simplistic modifiers. Very doesn't really help anybody. So if you say something's big, that's still objective. If you say something's very big, it's just a longer sentence that's still objective. You want to be able to show, not tell, in your writing. So in a mediocre essay, somebody might say, I developed a new compassion for the disabled. Well, that's just telling your reader something. In a better essay, you might get something like, whenever I had the chance to help the disabled, I did so happily. Once again, you're still mostly telling, but you're showing a little bit there. But in this next sentence, the next time Miss Cooper asked me to help her cross the street, I smiled and immediately took her arm. Now, if the reader had enough background information to know what's going on in this situation, we could see that the writer, has a new compassion or a different attitude. And they didn't have to tell us, it was something that we were able to see. And, when you're reading something, you definitely feel more connection to essays or works that have more show than tell. You also want to make wise word choices, especially in academic essays. Don't get too conversational. You're not, giving a speech. You're writing an essay, and it should feel different. I doesn't really belong in academic essays unless it's a narrative, so you want to leave that out. Instead of saying, I believe global warming is a threat to our planet, in an academic essay, you would just say global warming is a threat to our planet. It's stronger, and it is easier to defend as an argument. Don't repeat the same words over and over and over. Just pay attention when you're writing. A lot of times we have favorite words and they pop up repeatedly in our work. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of extra editing to make sure that's not the case in your essay. But it's really important to remember that your writing allows you the opportunity to express your creativity, to demonstrate your intelligence, and to affect your reader. Don't waste these writing opportunities. Every opportunity you have to write something should be looked at as a chance to share your voice. Okay, so let's talk about active versus passive voice. This is something that you'll see, pop up in grammar lessons and that kind of stuff. I'm never going to deduct points from your essay if you write in passive voice, but these are just kind of good rules to know to make your writing as effective as possible. So, active voice. In active voice, the subject is doing the action. The subject is obviously the thing that the sentence is about. In passive voice, this subject is being acted upon. So here's some examples. In active voice, you might say, Steve threw the ball. Steve is the subject. Steve is doing the action. That's active voice. In passive voice, we see the subject being acted upon. The ball was thrown by Steve. So the grammatical subject of this passive sentence, the ball was thrown by Steve, is the ball. But you and I both know that the sentence is really trying to communicate something about Steve. So Steve should be the subject of the sentence. There's a really fun rule that you can use or test to find out if something is active or passive. So basically, if you can add the phrase by zombies after the verb and it makes sense, you probably have passive voice. So for example, in our active sentence, Steve threw by zombies. Well, that one obviously is illogical. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work because it's written in active voice. But in our passive sentence, the ball was thrown by zombies. That makes perfect sense because it is written in passive voice. So this test is not 100% foolproof, but it's a good little tool that you can keep in your tool belt that will help you remember, is this active or passive? Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about passivity for just a second. Passive sentences are not grammatically incorrect. They're just not the best way to phrase your thoughts. A lot of times we hear politicians and businesses use passive voices to avoid taking the blame for certain actions. So hopefully this doesn't happen, but hypothetically, you might hear the electric company say something like, your electricity is going to be shut off. They say this instead of saying, we are going to shut off your electricity, because it shifts the blame. Or you might hear a politician say something like, yes, a crime was committed, instead of, yes, I committed the crime. Passive voice is often more difficult to understand, and it can create questions and confusion about who the actual subject of the sentence is. Passive voice is really only preferable when you don't know who the actual subject is. So, for example, in a police report, it would make a lot of sense to write the store was robbed instead of an unknown person robbed the store. Obviously, at the beginning of an investigation, you're not going to know. This type of passive voice is also used in suspenseful suspenseful fiction, so that you know or you don't know who did it or who's coming after you. So, remember, the majority of academic writing should be done in an active voice. If, on your grammar checkers, after you turn in your paper on Turnitin, you're getting a lot of passive voice, that's something that you want to look at and see if you can work on, translating those sentences into active voice. Okay, if this is something that you have questions about, please let me know. Reach out via email and I will be happy to help. Other than that, I'll see you guys soon.